Welcome back to another episode of Before You Buy, the show where we give you some straight-up gameplay and our first impressions of the latest games releasing. Hi folks, it's Falcon. Supergiant Games is one of the foundational independent game studios, and while they found a lot of success early on with games like Bastion and Transistor, Bastion to this day being my favorite game of theirs, the first Hades was their big breakthrough hit. Hades is an all-time classic and an absolute masterclass of the roguelike genre, so it's not really a surprise that in May of 2024 they launched their first ever sequel into early access. Now, just about a year and a half later, the 1.0 version of Hades 2 is out. I've played it, and there's no beating around the bush here. This game is fantastic. The first game is excellent, and this sequel takes everything they learned from making the first and used it to make an even more confident sequel that improves on the original's design in some smart ways. This one starts off with a bit more dramatic hook than the first. Instead of playing as the world's most persistent runaway, this game tasks you with a revenge mission against the Titan of Time. The Greek gods of Hades 2 are in full-on conflict. Hades himself has been imprisoned, and it's up to you to save him and bring the Mad Titan to justice. It's a simple but compelling setup that, much like the first game, gets expanded on through well-written but very punchy dialogue with your allies through flashbacks and playable memories that just do a great job expanding the world. It has worked since Bastion, and goddammit does it still work. The basic gameplay is very similar, almost pretty much the same to the original game. You start off at your base, one might call it a bastion, and at your base you talk to allies where you acquire upgrades, and you do all that kind of crap before starting your run. You travel through 4 different zones, traveling through a randomly generated collection of rooms, fighting enemies, collecting upgrades, and boons granted by the gods that give you various improvements to your abilities that drastically alter how you play the game. Each zone ends with a boss fight, and your ultimate goal is to return to Tartarus, avenge your family, and defeat Kronos in the House of Hades. Each run will last around 20 to 40 minutes, and at least at first, you're not going to survive the night. While each run is randomized, there's a heavy emphasis on progression here. In fact, Hades 2 gives you even more routes to improve your character and expand the options in your home base than the first game. And the new stuff here actually manages to feel more meaningful and satisfying. Stuff like the new Arcana system, where you unlock and equip cards that give a ton of powerful bonuses, but there's also a limit to how many of those you can use at once. These things are a lot more fun to get and tinker with than the previous game's upgrade paths, which were mostly just flat upgrades you'd unlock with a tiny percentage. And just gotta say it, this is the kind of thing that they needed to improve. With the Arcana, you get stuff like Death Defiance, which lets you survive a normally fatal attack, or you can constantly regenerate mana, perform special abilities faster. As you progress through the game, you can increase the amount of Arcana you can have activated at any one time, so you'll get significantly more powerful as the game goes on compared to where you started, but there's a little more to consider here than just making the numbers go up. I like that. I just think that the early game progression is just a big improvement over the first game. Hades 2 you're always unlocking something new or getting introduced to a new gameplay system, so even if you end up eating dirt with your most recent run, it doesn't feel like you're just treading water. There's something to look forward to at all times when you return to your base at the crossroads. There's also an entire other direction to go in, which is great as well. You don't just go down to face Kronos in the Underworld. There's also a surface to explore, which is another 4 zones, each with their own unique dangers and bosses. The surface is definitely more dangerous in terms of the 2 paths you can take. At first, you'll die just by being there. This new path basically doubles the amount of stuff that's in the sequel, and it's another way that the game smooths out the progression. By having a more advanced and difficult second path, they've made the first path you go down a little bit easier overall. The bosses are less of a difficulty wall in later parts of the run. Kronos himself is no joke, but every other fight isn't quite as bad. The boss design here is a lot of fun, and they did a great job making them not feel like a drag, even though you're essentially fighting the same boss over and over again. Scylla is always a highlight. She's the boss of the second zone, and she fights you with songs that actually change depending on the run. There's a backup guitarist and a drummer. They complicate things. It's a super fun fight. There's nothing here that I dreaded taking on, like with the Minotaur or Theseus from Hades 1. Man, those guys just sucked. So the general structure of the game is very much similar to the first. It's pretty much the same even. But how you actually play ends up feeling pretty different. And this is all down to how the new protagonist, Malinois, controls. Along with the standard attacks and special attacks, there's the ability to cast, which at its most basic level creates a circle that slows down enemies. It might not seem that useful at first, but with the right boons, it could become a devastatingly powerful attack, and you can center your entire run around it. There's also a mana bar to keep track of this time. Your standard and special attacks have modified more powerful Omega attacks that cost mana. There's also powerful super abilities that require spending a certain amount of mana in a fight to use, and mix all that in with how game-changing certain boons can be, like ones that modify your attacks but limit your total mana reserve. This game gives you a lot to think about in the middle of combat. It generally feels a little slower and more strategic. You're relying more on long-range magic and weapons that generally have more, well, range than the first game here. There are a few primary close-range weapons, but out of the 6 total weapons, about 4 of them let you keep your distance from enemies. It's most of them. Combat feels just as good as the first, though, which is good because it's still mostly what you're doing. In terms of level design, they don't stray too far from the Hades/Supermassive formula. They don't mix things up too much. It's mostly sticking with what worked about the first while adding a few new wrinkles here and there to keep things, I guess, interesting. It's not like they're not interesting. They like throwing you curveballs, though. The third Underworld zone is split into wider, more open areas, and that's a breath of fresh air. The first 2 zones of the surface also mix things up with a more non-linear approach to progression, but at the end of the day, you're still picking a door, fighting some enemies, and then getting an upgrade. This is another game where it's all about refreshing and refining the systems, not completely overhauling them, which is good because the systems are good. Another way the game has refined things is with the art direction, which is somehow actually better than the first. Like, the character and background art is just lavish and full of details. The music, the UI, the presentation in general is excellent. I have a feeling this is due to the budget. Like, they really had big success with the first Hades, and everything in Hades 2 feels polished to a mirror sheen. The confidence of these developers is really on display. Their take on the Greek pantheon, it remains pretty fascinating, and again, they're able to thread the needle, making things funny and light while also retaining the power and mystery of the Greek gods. They're not all just one-note jokes. The game manages to be pretty funny, though, which I think is something that you only really accomplish with strong writing, and the voice actors are all putting in the work to sell it, too. It's quality stuff all around, but if there's anything negative that I can say about Hades 2, and it might not be negative, depending on your perspective. I don't think, to me, it is actually even a negative statement, but it is ultimately a pretty safe sequel. People who love the first game and want more, this is probably enough for them. Actually, even for some people who had some problems with the first game, might actually like this one, because I think the progression is generally smoother in the early game, and the way the game doles out story and details, I think, is better than the first. I also really like some of the weapons more, and I find that the boons have more exciting and interesting synergy possibilities, but that's an individual taste thing, I would say. If you're just adamantly against the roguelike structure of doing a run, failing, and doing it again, this game isn't going to change that. It's just what these games are, and the isometric combat focus is still the focus. There's some talking heads, some slice base management in between. Hades 2 does not break the mold or reinvent the wheel. It could be argued that the game doesn't innovate. I mean, maybe if they waited a few years and made something else before returning to the Hades formula, it wouldn't stand out so much, but they made Hades and then they jumped into Hades 2, and if you're a big-time fan of their older games that did something completely different with each new entry, it might be a little disappointing, but I don't know. I am a fan of their old games. Most specifically, in fact, their oldest game. In fact, Hades is probably the best game since Bastion of theirs that in my opinion. So if you consider this a complaint, it's a minor complaint. By any metric, Hades 2 is an excellent game with a ton of content to chew on that basically has doubled the amount of content compared to the original. And it's mostly a good thing, too. There may be a few too many random crafting materials to worry about, and nobody ever wants to hang out with you at the hot springs, which is a thing you can do in this game. Clearly, Supergiant knows their audience, but other than that, I really have nothing but good things to say about Hades 2. The new weapons are mostly fun to use, the new zones are visually fantastic, And when you do have unique gimmicks, they're not too annoying and they do not bog the game down. The enemies are generally fun. The new 3D models for stuff, especially the bosses, just looking incredibly good. And they actually managed to mirror the character art pretty closely, and they drip feed you enough story to keep things engaging even when you're not actually making a lot of progress, which is not all the time, but sometimes. The great thing about Hades 2 is how it's a roguelike but has the heart of a more traditional linear game. You're always growing in some significant way. You're unlocking new stuff to do in your base, or getting a new weapon, or receiving some kind of reward. And even when you're not doing that, you're still getting something for each run. Your time is never totally wasted here like in some other roguelikes. Still, going through randomly generated areas and gathering upgrades as you go is still what it's all about. So if you just can't stand some degree of randomization, then Hades is never going to work for you. But hey, I've heard of people who were there to push through all of that just because they liked the characters of the first game and the story. And if that's you, then yeah, you'll probably like what they've done with this game too. It's got the same charms as the original and the same general drawbacks, if not mitigated to some extent. Hades 1 was a massive hit. It won multiple Game of the Year awards. It dominated the discussion for a while. So at this point, you probably already know if you're going to like Hades 2. Did you like the first game? Well, you'll probably like this one. It's the same, but more and better. If Hades was just kind of mediocre, then, I mean, that wouldn't be enough. But it's one of the best indies ever. So making a slightly better version of that thing does make this Game of the Year material. So I think it goes without saying, it's a recommend. I think you will absolutely enjoy this game if you're a fan of the genre or of the developer's previous games or whatever. Like, I think that it's worth a try one way or the other. It's not an expensive game either. It's $29, at least on Steam. And I'm sure it won't be long before it's on sale once or twice. Seriously, Hades 2 is great. But that's, my opinion. What do you think? Leave us a comment. Let us know. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at FalconTheHero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.
Oh, no way. No way. Look at Gal's a lady. Ladies never come to see our shows. You must be different. What's your name? Oh, make yourself comfy. We're just about to start, aren't we, gals?
Sirens.